why you should never leave the table when you're on a blind date. One of my best friends and I worked at the same restaurant. When I came in later that day for my shift, she told me a crazy story. She said that her first table were this guy and this girl, and she could tell they were on a first date. The girl was nervous, so she ordered a glass of wine. As far as she knew, the date seemed to be going well, and the girl got up to go to the bathroom. Right when my friend was about to come over and bring the silverware, she saw him put something in her wine. My friend, obviously terrified and freaking out, let our manager know, who then let the police know, and ran into the bathroom to tell her what was going on. The girl ended up staying in the bathroom until the police came, arrested him, and escorted him out of the building. It was noon on a Tuesday. You don't think you're going to be drugged at noon?
Time when I was in kindergarten, after lunch we always had nap times, and after them we always had to do work. My lazy ass never wanted to do work, so I came up with the idea of pretending like I was sleeping after everyone woke up. The teachers always let the kids sleep in, so it worked out perfectly. So then nap time came and put my plan into action. After everyone woke up, I remained on the floor pretending I was sleeping. After about 2 hours of pretending I was sleeping, I actually fell asleep. The next thing I knew was when I woke up I was in the hospital. I didn't know what happened. I sat up and my mom was sitting by my bed. When she saw me awake, she started crying and called for a doctor. Apparently what happened was one of the kids, probably the freckled bitch in my class, leaned back on her chair and fell backwards and fell with a metal chair on my head, and I didn't wake up, so they called 911. And that bitch put me in a coma.
I'm gonna tell you guys about the time that my entire class teamed up to take my teacher down. And by down, I mean fired, which is terrible, but... And to be clear, I wasn't involved in the incident. I was just asked in to be a witness along with the rest of the class. If you're not interested at this point, I don't even know. So when I was in 6th grade, I had this teacher called Mr. W. We're gonna call him Mr. W. He was our science teacher. And he was fine. He wasn't amazing or bad. He was just okay. He did smell really, really bad. But again, that didn't affect his teaching at all. One day, however, I don't even know how this happened. He asked us all to get started on our work. He was a little irritated that day. I don't even remember why. One of the girls in our class, her name was Summer. She didn't have her workbook. Mr. W asked her where her work was. I didn't bring it today. They started arguing. The rest of the class was kind of silent, just watching this. She's a nice girl. She wasn't attacking him or anything. He did, however, get very angry. So angry, in fact, that he grabbed his binder and threw it across the room over her head. It just barely skipped her head and slammed on the floor. This wasn't like an empty binder from the dollar store. It was a teacher binder full of work. We were all silent. Summer stopped talking. Look for part 2.
I was 11 years old when my mom kicked me out of the house for the first time. It was a school day! The sun wasn't even out! So you know what I did? I took a shit in the front yard. And I smeared it on her house with a leaf! And then I took my happy ass on a school bus with a fucking trash bag of my belongings and went to school. And I told all of my friends, naturally. I thought this was the best revenge. I thought this was a normal thing that happened between daughters and mothers. I got sent to the guidance counselor.
I was coming from downstairs. It sounded like something was scratching the back door. But when I got downstairs, the noise had stopped. But when I looked at the window facing the woods, there were footprints in the snow. But my aunt and uncle were really strict, and they had this rule that we weren't allowed to go in their room when they were sleeping. So I made sure all the doors were locked, and I decided I would tell them in the morning. The next morning we woke up and it was a really intense blizzard. Such heavy snowfall that we couldn't see the ground. So when I told my aunt and uncle about the footprints, they didn't believe me and told me it was probably a nightmare. The next day I had to leave, and I didn't go back and visit my cousins for a long time. But the next summer, my cousins really wanted me to come for their birthday party. Before visiting them, I looked up whether they had ever found the woman who had escaped from the hospital. And Google said that authorities were still looking for her and it was a high priority case. When I got to their house, I was playing with my cousins. They were about to turn 6 years old. And one of them goes, "Let's go check if she's there." And my cousin runs to the window facing the woods. So I asked my other cousin who she was talking about. And she goes, "Oh, don't worry, that's just her imaginary friend." But I knew that did not sound right.
Hey guys, here's a pretty scary story from when I was little. I was 5 years old and my mom and I went to the mall because it was holiday season and we wanted to be a little festive. We went into this one store and as soon as we came out, there was no one outside the mall. And you know how usually malls are super busy and packed, especially around Christmas time? Nope, there was no one there. All of a sudden, we hear this lady screaming, "Get out of here, you're not allowed to be here, go, go." And obviously we're like, what's going on? Why are we not allowed to be here? The lady was like, "I can't say, just go." And obviously my mom and I were like, what do we do? Like, where are we gonna go? So we found this cafe and there were a bunch of people stacked inside, so we thought, let's go try to hide in there. The guy was like, if you come in, you're not allowed to come out. My mom and I were like, okay, let's just do it. That's the best option we have. When we were inside the cafe, some people told us that there was an active shooter on the loose or something. There were a bunch of police cars, but we finally got out of there, and it was pretty scary.
Storytime of how I figured out that my sister was trying to kill me. So me and my sister were like best friends when we were little, but she was a very, very jealous person. So years and years go on, but her jealousy seems to start to grow. So I never really thought about it until I found out that she really wanted me dead. But throughout the years, she would do little things to get me hurt. For example, she pushed me off the top of our treehouse and I ended up breaking my arm. But every time I got hurt, my family would baby me and she would get even more mad. So at this time, we're about 16 years old, and I had to go in her room to get her laundry. And under her laundry, I found her diary, or journal, or whatever you call it. I was flipping through the pages, I found out some interesting and crazy things. Then one was named The Perfect Murder.
This is why you should never take a prank too far. Once there were two young twins who lived in a small town and they were known for constantly misbehaving. One day a man had passed away peacefully in his home and the twins wanted to play a prank on everyone else living in the town, so they snuck into the house and started messing with the man's body. One twin moved his mouth like a puppet and the other one poked his eyes out with a stick. As they were doing this, they heard footsteps. They couldn't find anywhere to hide, so they placed the body back in the coffin, then got in the coffin themselves and closed the lid. But what they didn't know was they were taking the coffin straight to the funeral. The people carrying the coffin noted that it was much heavier than usual but brushed it off. No one even noticed that the twins were gone until the coffin was lowered. The twins' mother appeared at the cemetery about the missing twins, which stopped the funeral and began a search. Eventually, the man carrying the coffin confessed that the coffin had weighed more than it was supposed to, so they lifted it out and opened the lid. They did find the boys there, but they found them lying on top of the body, whose hands were wrapped tightly around each of their necks. The twins had been strangled to death.
Story time. I babysat a lot of kids in my neighborhood, and there was this one night that I was babysitting a 2-year-old. It was around 10 o'clock at night, so the kid was sleeping, and I was just sitting in the living room. In the living room, there was a big TV, a couch, and then behind me, it was a wall with a giant window. So it was really late at night, I had nothing to do, so I was Snapchatting my friends. If you Snapchat anybody, I'm sure you know that sometimes you Snapchat really fast. You don't even know or look at what you're sending. I was mass snapping all my friends, and then one of them replied 10 minutes later. And he said, "Who's that guy behind you?" And I turned around and no one was there, so I'm like, he's playing a joke on me. But then I get another Snapchat from this friend I had, and she lives all the way across the country. They don't know each other. And she said, "I think there's someone outside." So I was really freaked out because I was alone. There was a giant window behind me. Apparently there was someone outside. I wasn't gonna call the child's parents because I didn't want to freak them out, but I was scared. So then I went around the house, locked all of the doors. Sorry,